It's the Schilling Show. Thanks so much for joining us. Weekdays from noon to 2, it's the place to be. And this is a discussion you'll hear nowhere else in the Central Virginia media market. And I really mean nowhere else. You do not have these frank discussions anywhere else in Central Virginia. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to do so. And right now, I'm pleased to welcome to the Schilling Show Frank Gasperini, who joins us. He's the Executive Vice President of the National Council of Agricultural Employers. We're talking today about his concern to save America's food and economy. And thank you so much for joining us today on the Schilling Show. Frank, tell us about SAFE.
Well, thank you, Rob. SAFE is a coalition of agricultural groups, including my own association, NCAE, and it's groups and coalitions, and our goal is to get out the message about how labor-intensive agriculture works to provide America's food. Labor-intensive agriculture, fruit and vegetable production, dairying are very different than commodity agriculture where you rely on equipment. Mm-hmm. In food production in general, you rely on a lot of workers seasonally. So the issue, one of the things we want to make sure is that Congress and the states address and discuss the issue of how to provide ag labor at the same time or before they add more enforcement only and or mandatory E-Verify strictures, because the two need to be addressed hand in hand.
Okay, so
excuse me.
So you're not calling for open borders, are you?
Well, we're not. We need immigrant labor. We are calling for the government to make rational policies that allow workers to come and return home, to come here and work and return home where they're needed. We understand that they need to be tracked. We are not for wide open borders. We want rational processes, but we need processes that work. In labor-intensive agriculture right now, our food production is done by about 1.2 million to 1.5 million seasonal workers. Mm-hmm. Right now, 3/4 of them, probably, or more, are falsely documented. We know that because when ICE comes and does an I-9 audit, we lose a lot of workers. Mm-hmm. Farmers do their required forms, the Form I-9. You get the two pieces of identification required from a worker. If they don't look patently bad, if they look okay, you're not allowed to discriminate, so you accept the worker. And they appear to be legal. But when ICE comes and audits, we routinely lose half or more of our workers. That usually happens around harvest time. You have apple growers in Virginia, tobacco growers in Virginia, dairies, all at risk of losing their critical workers during that one period, very often of just a few weeks or a month or two during the year when their entire income for their businesses run. There's no other business that's forced to run with that kind of uncertainty, and agriculture in America can't survive with that uncertainty.
Okay, so are you saying these are jobs that Americans won't do? Because we have quite a few people who are unemployed today.
We have a lot of people who are unemployed, and depending on which guest worker program, if you're using the legal guest worker program, you have to accept every American who asks for the job. And typically, if you're hiring 200 or 300 guest workers and the state workforce agency tells you have to accept everybody, you might hear from 100 or 2 Americans. You might have 5 of them show up and try to go to work and leave, usually pretty promptly. The American unemployed generally cannot or will not do this work. It's seasonal. It's migratory. It's not where Americans live. And there was a report from, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, just a week or two ago that said the average American now will not move and relocate for a job.
Well, they won't if the government is giving them handouts, and maybe we need to start by reforming the American welfare system so that people have motivation to work. I mean, it goes all the way back to Jamestown when they figured out that if you just hand people something all the time and encourage them not to work, they won't do it. I think Americans would do the jobs if the government stopped handing them money. Maybe that's where we should start.
That's a great discussion to start, Rob, and I would encourage it. On the other hand, food production agriculture is very time sensitive, and we will have farmers go out of business or shift to other crops by next year if this isn't fixed, and the government generally takes years to fix these things. In the meantime, we have to have a continuing supply of legal foreign guest workers, and the government hasn't provided that for us.
977-1070 is the phone number. If you have comments or questions for our guests, we have just a little bit of time left with Frank Gasperini, who's joining us from SAFE, Save America's Food and Economy. Okay, so let me ask you if there's a place that people could visit you online to get more information about what it is you're concerned with here.
You can look at the SAFE, S-A-F-E, website. You can also look at at www.ncaeonline.org.
Okay. Frank Gasperini, thank you so much for joining us today on the Schilling Show. I really appreciate it. I think there are a lot of issues at hand here, but the bigger issue is the future of this country